DW Africa Link.
Paternity fraud is when a man is told a child belongs to him, yet DNA proves otherwise. In Nigeria, this is a growing concern. A recent report by the country's leading DNA center, Smart DNA, revealed that 1 in 4 men they tested were not the biological fathers of the children they believed were theirs, male firstborns. Imagine the shock of loving and caring for a child who you were made to believe is biologically yours. How would you face that doubt? For many Nigerian fathers, this is a painful and personal journey. With testing more common but legal protections still lacking, family trust hangs in the balance. So today we ask, in a country, Africa's most populous nation, where paternity fraud is high, how can fathers protect their rights, preserve trust, and navigate the truth with dignity? That is what we are exploring today together. My name is George Okachi, and you're welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Now, Smart DNA, a reputable DNA testing center, released its 2025 annual DNA testing report a few days ago. The findings sparked widespread debate across Nigeria. Some media outlets inaccurately reported that 1 in 4 Nigerian men are not biological fathers of their children. This is misleading given Nigeria's population of over 100 million men. Such a statistic on a national scale is not just possible. So Smart DNA clarified that the 1 in 4 figure refers specifically to the men who sought DNA testing at their center, not the entire male population. Nevertheless, the conversation continues, which is why we have Owoyemi Hanifat stepping in for the operations manager at Smart DNA and Oluwafemi Williams, head of strategy and corporate communications at Smart DNA, joining us alongside our correspondent Ben Shemang, reporting from Abuja. But before we get to the conversation, let's hear from Nigerians on this DNA matter.
DNA is not necessary. It arises from lack of trust, and it does more harm than good.
So for some men, the reason why they ask for DNA tests, maybe they know their wives are promiscuous. They have a feeling. Maybe they've been suspecting the wife. To some extent, I'll say I support it.
I honestly think it is necessary to set the record straight ab initio. A DNA should be done from the onset.
If truly marriage is built on trust, I think there is no need for any.
Yes, I support a DNA test if the need arises. Even the Bible says that the truth you know will make you free.
Now, let me start with you, Oluwafemi. What motivated Smart DNA to produce this comprehensive report? And in your view, what was the most surprising finding?
Our motivation actually stemmed from 2 things. Number one is that we have this culture of transparency. So everything that we do, we try to put it out there. But the primary reason is actually to correct a lot of false information out there. So if you go online to, go and check paternity, fraud rates, and then you see a lot of data that will say, that 30% paternity, fraud rates in Nigeria, 30% of paternity test results come out negative in Nigeria. You see some data as high as 45%. So we felt like to correct that, what actually is the data say? So we decided 3 years ago to be publishing our own data, which is going to give a true reflection of what the situation is from our own point of view, I mean, from the data available to us. So it just essentially to correct the misinformation out there.
Well, I must say that I'm invested in this topic today. So for our listeners, we have 3 types of DNA: personal paternity tests, immigration-related tests, and a prenatal paternity test. And this is used to determine whether a potential father is the biological father. So Hanifat, how do you determine that I am not the father?
So for us to test paternity compatibility or parentage compatibility, is performed to determine whether individuals share a parent-child relationship. So a DNA profile will be produced for each tested individual consisting of a number of DNA markers. So for us to do this, we take each individuals to be tested, we take their samples. So in the DNA markers, we have what we call alleles. So each individuals, we all have this. And then for us to confirm the parentage, it is a test, direct test, meaning that in paternity or maternity case, the alleles from the child should match with the alleged parent across all the tested DNA markers. So if more than 3 DNA markers do not match, the alleged parent is excluded as the biological parent or of the child. So we usually test 25 DNA markers. So this is the method that we use to define paternity compatibility or parentage compatibility.
Ben, many Nigerians were shocked when media outlets highlighted the 1 in 4 Nigerian men may not be biological fathers of their children. Were you among those surprised or worried?
Well, it never worried me because I know myself and I know my wife. But you see, it gave some people serious concerns. Serious concerns because it's now creating some doubts even in some families. The question of trust, there's a trust burden, trust deficit, so to speak. A law was enacted in Nigeria. You call it the Child Rights Act, 2003. It allows scientific methods to actually define or know who a child, who owns the child. Therefore, that's where we're talking about the DNA today. But it took Nigeria by storm, honestly. The headlines were all over the place. At the point, some people said, look, why is it that Nigerians will have image problem abroad, at home, and some children will now start mocking fellow children in playgrounds, in schools, and all that. Oh, your paternity is in question, or your dad was not a faithful fellow, or your mom wasn't a faithful fellow. So at the point, some will say, look, if you've been adopting children from orphanage, so why don't you simply take this and just say it's the wish of God, handle that and move on.
Femi, can you clarify whether the 1 in 4 truly represents all Nigerian men or just those seeking testing?
The data did not actually say that 1 in 4 Nigerian parents are not the biological, parent of their child. Actually, what the data says is that 1 in 4 paternity tests conducted by us turn out negative. Now, in data science, right, in statistics, you understand that your sample population is very important. The samples, population must be representative. Now, in this case, our sample is biased, right? Because the people that we are testing are people who already have specific reason to question paternity, right? Mm-hmm. So, which means that they're actually not representative of the general population. I mean, you must have reason to. So, you know what? Because it's not free, right? For me to go and do the test, then I must have a reason, which means that I'm not representative of the general population.
But Hanifat, how popular is DNA testing in Nigeria now?
So as much as we would like to stay confidential with our data, and I would like to say we have quite a number of people that reach out to us for paternity testing, and like Femi has said, there are always reasons for them to come to us for this DNA testing. So there will be an issue already before they reach out to us that, okay, we want to run this test. But talking about our data, we have thousands of people that were tested before we reach this stage.
In your report, you've highlighted that the high rate of negative results signals a trust deficit. How do families cope with such revelations emotionally and financially?
For instance, I can tell you that for people that are in, a kind of formal relationship, right, husband and wife, the probability of getting negative results is so significantly lower. However, in dynamics where the parties are not married, especially among younger female, the probability of getting negative results is higher, very high, which means that for people that are not in committed relationship, they usually have multiple partners and a whole lot. In fact, the implication of this from what we've seen in-house is that if you are not married to someone, and it's probably better to check, right? But for people that are married, it's not likely going to get a negative result.
Ben, from your experiences, are there stories or reactions that illustrate how this paternity crisis is changing Nigerian homes?
Absolutely. Before this report came out, we've had stories about families having some misunderstandings because of this issue of paternity. I remember Justice Anthony Okodas. After going through DNA, having had crisis with his wife, it was realized that of his 5 children, 3 were not his. So you can see, and that's a high-profile person, a justice. And then you also had a billionaire lawyer, Nedum Wonko, at the point, look, they had this issue, and it was discovered that some of his children were really not his. And even in the entertainment industry, we had Innocent Dibia. We call him Tubaba here. We find out that he has some issues pertaining to some of his children, even a former head of state. I think a year or so, I was also investigating why people go for this test, if it's going to cause some problems. In Nigeria, we say some wahala. The doctor there said, look, there's this Japa syndrome. People want to go look for in the greener pastures abroad. So it happened that at the point some countries abroad were saying they don't know whether there are no cases of human trafficking when you see somebody just ferrying children out of the country. So they said, in this case, there has to be a paternity test to ensure that you are not carrying some people's children illegally abroad. So that became a visa requirement. So they went for those tests, and of course they came out some very, very shocked that the children that were calling him daddy weren't really any of that nature. But some people say, look, take it or leave it. The Nigerians are courageous. What about those who are pretending as if nothing is happening?
And is DNA testing important after all, despite all these challenges?
From our data, right, we know that 83% of the tests that we do are for what we call peace of mind. So which means that it's not been mandated by a government body. So you are just doing it, to get clarity. And people generally do that when they have suspicion. So in a lot of cases, it could be there is a paternity dispute. We see a lot of that where a lady has given birth and somebody comes and says, no, I am the father of the child that has been, given to you. So there's a dispute. So when there is dispute, they usually come for paternity testing. So usually there is always a trigger. The trigger is either there is a room for suspicion or there is a dispute, generally in many cases. And that constitutes 83% of the DNA testing.
But of course, that is a huge number. And of course, you only go for testing if there is a doubt. So how does smart DNA support families dealing with the psychological impact after the negative results?
In our facility, we have procedure for that. We have what we call post-test counseling. So in a case, in a situation where we have clients that have negative test results, we follow up with them to know what we would do to give them, emotional support during this time, and then ensure that they also have support system to help them through this situation, because it can be really, really traumatizing, and it's a lot. It's really a lot. Finding out that the children that you've always known as your children, they are not yours. It can come with a lot of emotional consequences. But in our facility, we handle that. And then in a case whereby we see that maybe a particular client is not coping well, we also refer them to an higher psychological facility.
Your report recommended stronger legal frameworks for paternity fraud. Can you expound on that?
Why there is actually, we are not aware of any specific laws, right? I know they have it in South Africa, but the legal people know under other areas of law that they can, bring a matter if they want to take it up. But even if there is no specific law, which is likely the case, there are other, acts and legislation that they can bring the matter of paternity fraud under.
And well, there are some misconceptions like DNA testing is only for the rich people, or if a child looks like me, they must be mine. So there is no need of going to test after all. So how do you combat this?
Yeah, I think that goes to what Hanifat was saying. So here, right, there are two types of counseling. There is pre-test counseling, which means that before you go to test, we always try to tell them that, are you ready for whatever the outcome is? If you are not, it's probably better that you don't even do the test, right? Because all of us, the way we cope is different. But then there are instances, and in a lot of cases, really, that in a lot of cases, people take this. I mean, I've seen a lot of them when they come and they said they know that the result will probably be negative. But when it's negative, the point is that this is a child that they've taken care of. They form a kind of bond with this child. So irrespective of what the result says, they are still going to, take parental responsibility because the child is an innocent, party here. And so what I would tell people is the business people will not want to like it, but the reality is that if you cannot cope with the result, I don't know, maybe you probably shouldn't do the test because it can be very, very traumatic. But at the same time, the earlier you know, the better. What I would just advise, and that's one of the parts that I'm not saying I'm happy, but I think I find encouraging the report is that for almost half of the, of the tests are done on children between 0 and 5, which means that the earlier you do the test, the better, because the longer the child stays with you, the more bond you form. And it's very difficult on the child, difficult on you as a parent as well. So if you must do it, please do it early.
Ben, according to Nigerians you're speaking to, is there a stigma attached to requesting or undergoing DNA tests?
Honestly, yes, there is, because you see, Nigeria is a place where people always want to blow their ego. Some people want to show, but this is my family, my heritage, and all that stuff. But George, let me quickly remember that there was a case, or about two, where a woman gave birth, and there was supposed to be a naming ceremony. Two different fathers appears for the same event. So you can see that questionable act. So the shame of the family of that lady, the shame of even the men that were involved because they were also married somewhere else. So quite a lot of things. That I spoke with a professor in a University of Abuja, Celeste Nodogu. He said, look, people are just worried over nothing. People are adopting children. So what is new? Why blow the fuse? Why did that kind of a thing? I also spoke with a pastor, Latifada Febua. He said, look, people should just be honest. People should just be, be honest and stay with your partner. And that's solves the matter.
Ben makes it sound easy. And it's not easy, I know. But for me, or Hanifat, what safeguards ensure confidentiality and consent at Smart DNA?
Actually, there is the, to answer that question, there is a legal requirement, and then there is the what is decent as a human being, right? Legal requirement is, we're talking about private information, and we have data protection law in Nigeria. So, which means as an organization, I can't speak of any other people, but us, we are always, we have to abide by the NDPR and all the relevant law, which means that there is strict confidentiality. In fact, here, the staff here do not have access to the DNA results. Now, on the question of consent, which is very important, the reality for when you want to, so there is a form, there's a consent form that anytime you want to take a test, you must sign a consent that, I am consenting to do this test if you're up to 16, right? For a child that is less than 16, there has to be consent by either a parent or a legal guardian that I am consenting for this minor to do this test, to contribute this sample. In fact, we go a step further. Apart from filling that form, there is now an indemnity form where you undertake that you are not presenting the wrong person. So we have this very strict consent procedure and SLA that guides how we handle patient data. And that's something very, very important, because for you to decide to do DNA testing, it is something that's supposed to be private. So it should not be disclosed to any party that you have not given consent to.
And before we go, what reforms would you recommend to protect children and presumed fathers?
Thank you very much for that question. So, like we have been saying, if there's a law guiding this, I think it will be much easier on men and then the children involved, which are innocent. So the reforms we would recommend, or that I would personally recommend, is if there is a penalty for women guilty of paternity fraud. Now we are talking about paternity fraud here, not misattributed paternity. So if there is a penalty for that, I believe this would bring down the percentage of negative results. Also, access to free therapy sessions or affordable unlimited therapy sessions. It will go a long way for both men and child. Involved. Yes. So when they have access to emotional support during the test and outside the test, and like we said, DNA comes with a lot of stigma and a lot of identity crisis. So when people involved in this test, when they are being assured and when they are being supported during this period, I believe it's going to reduce the stigma, and then it will make them believe the DNA testing does not really determine who they are, their personality this time. So it's just to know the next step to make the best decision. This is a life decision for that matter.
Ben, as a respected journalist, a father and a societal voice, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, that I want to compare DNA with VAR in football match, video assisted referee. Once you have made up your mind to go test, especially the celebrities, they make announcements, people will know and will begin to expect the result. What will this look like? Instead of making it private matter, So I think that if it's going to break families, break homes, bring enmity, I think people should not just go for it, so that we don't have tension as VAR would show during football matches.
Very well. If you invoke the VAR, be ready for the results, which would be announced publicly. So, Femi, closing remarks?
Yeah, I think my closing remark is that whoever the parties involved, whether the woman or the man, they should just put the interest of the child, first. And I think that's what should just guide them, because the child is the innocent one here. It's just the child. Make sure that whatever you do, even before you take the test, put the interest of the child first.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
What we've had today reveals a complex picture, one of painful revelations, but also growing determination for transparency. But my highlights were, unlike some countries, Nigeria has no specific laws penalizing paternity fraud, leaving men with little resources. Couples should consider early paternity testing, even pre-birth, via non-invasive methods to prevent long-term disputes. And of course, families should normalize paternity discussions rather than treating them as a taboo, reducing stigma and legal battles. But we would love to hear from you. Do you believe Nigeria can build lasting trust through transparency around paternity? Or are the challenges too deeply rooted? Join the conversation on our Facebook page, DW Africa. Find us on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and follow the DW Africa YouTube channel to never miss an episode. And this episode was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. My name is George Okachi, and thank you for joining me on Africa Link, where we bring you the stories that matter.
DW. Made for minds.